Los Angeles, California, July 20, 1973. Chuck Norris is teaching an afternoon class at his Torrance Dojo when his wife Linda walks through the door holding a telephone with a look on her face that makes Chuck's blood freeze. She says quietly, "You need to take this. It's Raymond Cho calling from Hong Kong." Chuck takes the phone, hears Raymond's voice shaking. "Chuck, I don't know how to say this. Bruce is dead. Bruce Lee died this morning. I'm sorry." What happens in the next 10 seconds doesn't just destroy Chuck emotionally. It creates a promise that lasts 50 years, changes how Chuck approaches every day of his life, and proves that real friendship transcends death, that legacy is built through daily honor, not grand gestures. The dojo goes silent. Chuck is standing in front of 20 students, black belts and colored belts, all watching their instructor's face drain of color, watching him struggle to process words that make no sense. Bruce Lee is dead. Bruce Lee, his friend, his training partner, the healthiest, most vital person Chuck has ever known, the man who moves like water, who radiates energy, who's only 32 years old, same age as Chuck, at the absolute peak of his powers, filming movies, teaching, living, dead. Impossible. The word doesn't fit, won't fit. Chuck says into the phone, voice hollow, "What happened? How?" Raymond Cho, Bruce's producer and friend, says through his own shock, cerebral edema, brain swelling. He collapsed at Betty Ting Pei's apartment. They rushed him to hospital but couldn't save him. The doctors don't fully understand what happened. He was fine yesterday, Chuck. We were planning next week's filming, and now he's gone. Chuck hangs up the phone mechanically, stands there holding it, staring at nothing, his students watching him, knowing something terrible just happened but not knowing what, waiting for their teacher to speak, to explain, to give them context. Chuck tries to talk, his voice cracks. He says, "Class is canceled. Bruce Lee died. My friend died. I need..." He can't finish the sentence. Doesn't know what he needs, just knows he can't be here, can't teach, can't function. The students leave quietly, shocked, many of them crying. Bruce Lee is famous now, Enter the Dragon just released, becoming a phenomenon, and now he's dead at 32. It doesn't make sense to anyone. Chuck walks to his office, sits at his desk, puts his head in his hands. Linda comes in, closes the door, sits beside him, doesn't say anything, just puts her hand on his shoulder. They sit like that for 20 minutes, Chuck processing, trying to make his brain accept what it refuses to believe. 13 months ago, Chuck and Bruce filmed their fight scene at the Roman Colosseum. 12 hours under the Italian sun, creating something beautiful. Bruce telling Chuck, "We're making history." Both of them laughing, exhausted, exhilarated, planning future projects, talking about getting together for training when Chuck visits Hong Kong next month. Next month, a month Bruce won't see. Next month doesn't exist for Bruce anymore. Chuck remembers the last conversation they had 3 weeks ago, long-distance call. Bruce excited about Enter the Dragon, saying the film is going to change everything, going to make Hollywood accept martial arts as legitimate cinema, going to open doors for Asian actors. Bruce's voice full of energy, full of plans, full of that particular optimism that made him magnetic. That voice is silent now, forever silent. Chuck will never hear it again, never hear Bruce laugh, never spar with him, never debate philosophy, never plan the next collaboration. All of it gone in one morning in Hong Kong. The funeral is scheduled for July 25th in Hong Kong, 5 days away. Chuck books a flight immediately, doesn't think about cost or logistics, just knows he has to be there, has to see Bruce one final time, has to pay respects to the man who changed his life. Linda asks if he wants her to come. Chuck says no, this is something he needs to do alone, something too raw to share even with his wife. The flight to Hong Kong is 17 hours, longest 17 hours of Chuck's life. He sits in his seat, staring out the window, replaying every moment he spent with Bruce. Their first meeting at the Long Beach tournament in 1964. Bruce approaching backstage, asking to spar. That 30-second exchange where Chuck realized Bruce was operating on a different level. Their training sessions, Bruce teaching Jeet Kune Do philosophy, be like water, my friend. The Coliseum filming, Bruce's perfectionism, shooting the fight sequence 12 times to get it exactly right. Every conversation, every laugh, every moment of mutual respect between two martial artists who understood each other completely. Hong Kong, when Chuck arrives, is chaos. Bruce Lee's death has stunned the entire city. He was Hong Kong's biggest star, their pride, their representative to the world, and now he's gone. The streets are filled with mourning. Everywhere Chuck looks, people wearing black, newspaper headlines announcing the tragedy, photos of Bruce covering every newsstand. The city has lost more than a celebrity. It's lost a symbol, a hope, proof that someone from Hong Kong could conquer the world. Chuck goes to the funeral home where Bruce's body lies in state. The line to pay respects stretches for blocks. Thousands of people waiting hours just to spend 30 seconds near Bruce's casket. Chuck doesn't use his connection to skip the line. He waits with everyone else, 4 hours standing in Hong Kong humidity, surrounded by grief, everyone crying, everyone struggling to accept that the man they're here to honor won't move again, won't smile again, won't inspire them with his energy again. When Chuck finally reaches the casket, he sees Bruce lying there in a traditional Chinese suit, hands folded, face peaceful but wrong, so wrong, because Bruce's face was never still, always animated, always expressing thought and emotion and intensity. This stillness is unnatural. This silence is obscene. Chuck stands there, looking at his friend's body, and the reality finally crashes through all his denial. Bruce is dead. This isn't a nightmare he'll wake from. This is permanent, final, irreversible. Chuck says quietly, too quietly for anyone else to hear, "I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I couldn't help. I'm sorry the world lost you so soon." He wants to say more, but his throat closes, tears streaming down his face now, not caring who sees, not caring about maintaining composure. Bruce was his friend. Friends are allowed to grieve. The funeral service itself is July 25th. Massive ceremony at Kowloon Funeral Parlor, hundreds of people inside, thousands more outside. Every major Hong Kong celebrity attends. Bruce's family sits in the front row. His wife, Linda Lee, his mother, Grace, his siblings, all devastated, all holding each other, trying to process a loss that has no explanation. Bruce was healthy. Bruce was careful. Bruce took care of his body better than anyone. And still, somehow, his brain swelled and killed him. No warning, no time to say goodbye. Just gone. Chuck is asked to serve as pallbearer, to carry Bruce's casket. He agrees immediately, honored and destroyed by the request. 6 pallbearers total. Chuck, Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Danny Inosanto, Taki Kimura, and Peter Chin. Bruce's closest friends, the men he trained with, laughed with, trusted with his philosophy and his friendship. Together, they lift Bruce's casket, carry him from the funeral parlor to the hearse. The weight is physical and emotional. Chuck is carrying his friend's body, carrying the vessel that held Bruce's incredible spirit, now empty, now just flesh and bone without the energy that made it extraordinary. The burial is at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Bruce's American home. The family wants him buried in America, not Hong Kong, somewhere peaceful, somewhere removed from the chaos of fame. Chuck flies to Seattle for the burial. Smaller ceremony, just family and closest friends. They lower Bruce's casket into the ground, covering it with flowers, everyone saying final goodbyes. Chuck stands at the graveside after most people leave, just him and the grave, and makes a promise out loud. "Bruce, you taught me that martial arts is more than fighting. You showed me philosophy, artistry, the responsibility to represent our craft with integrity. I'll promise I'll honor that every day, every class I teach, every film I make. I'll make sure people know what you stood for, what you believed, what you gave to martial arts. Your legacy won't die with you. I swear it." Returning to Los Angeles feels surreal. Chuck's dojo is the same, his students are the same, his life looks the same, but nothing feels the same. Bruce's absence is everywhere. Every technique Chuck teaches has Bruce's influence. Every philosophical discussion about martial arts references something Bruce said. The empty space where Bruce should be is massive, undeniable, permanent. Chuck teaches his next class a week after the funeral. Before starting, he talks to his students about Bruce, says, "Bruce Lee was my friend. More than that, he was my teacher, even though we were the same age, even though I was world champion when we met. He taught me things I didn't know I needed to learn. He showed me that mastery isn't about dominating others, it's about perfecting yourself. He proved that real martial arts serves philosophy, not ego. And now he's gone, at 32, before he could give the world everything he had to offer. That's the tragedy. Not just that we lost him, but that he had so much left to teach and time ran out." Chuck continues, voice getting stronger. "Here's what I learned from Bruce's death. We don't know how much time we have. Bruce thought he had decades. He had days. We owe it to him, to ourselves, to approach every day like it matters, to teach every class like it's our last chance to make an impact, to treat every student like they might carry forward what we teach long after we're gone. Bruce lived that way. That's why his impact was so massive despite his short life. That's the lesson. Not the tragedy of his death, but the power of his life." The students listen, many crying, all changed by Chuck's words, by the reality that someone as vital as Bruce Lee can simply stop existing. Youth doesn't protect you, health doesn't guarantee tomorrow, energy doesn't prevent death. All we have is today, this moment, this opportunity to matter. Chuck keeps his promise to Bruce in specific daily ways. Every interview for the next 50 years, when asked about his career, Chuck mentions Bruce. "Bruce Lee gave me my start in films. The Coliseum fight scene was my film school. Everything I learned about on-screen martial arts, I learned from Bruce." He doesn't have to mention Bruce. Most interviewers don't ask. Chuck volunteers it anyway, making sure Bruce's contribution is acknowledged, making sure people know he didn't build his career alone, that Bruce's generosity opened doors. When Chuck teaches martial arts, he incorporates Bruce's philosophy. Be like water becomes a core principle Chuck passes to thousands of students over decades. Not just the phrase, but the meaning, adaptability, flow, responding to circumstances instead of rigidly adhering to predetermined patterns. Bruce's Jeet Kune Do philosophy influences Chuck's teaching profoundly, making him a better instructor because Bruce made him think deeper about what martial arts actually means. In 1993, 20 years after Bruce's death, Chuck is asked to speak at a Martial Arts Hall of Fame ceremony honoring Bruce posthumously. Chuck stands at the podium, looks out at hundreds of martial artists and says, "Bruce Lee died 20 years ago, at 32. I'm now 53, 21 years older than Bruce ever got to be. I've had 2 extra decades he didn't get. That's not fair. He deserved more time. But since he didn't get it, those of us who learned from him have a responsibility. Live well enough for 2. Accomplish enough for 2. Impact enough people for 2. Because Bruce's time was cut short, but his mission wasn't completed. We complete it. Every student we teach with integrity, every time we demonstrate that martial arts is philosophy, not violence, every moment we choose character over ego, we're finishing what Bruce started." The audience gives a standing ovation, not for Chuck's speech, but for the truth it contains, for the recognition that legacy isn't passive, isn't automatic, requires active participation from those left behind. Bruce's legacy lives because people like Chuck refuse to let it die, because they incorporate his teachings into their own practice, because they tell his story to new generations. In 2013, 40 years after Bruce's death, Chuck returns to Hong Kong for a martial arts convention. While there, he visits Bruce's statue on the Avenue of Stars, life-size bronze Bruce in a fighting pose, thousands of tourists taking photos, treating it like any other landmark. Chuck stands there alone after the tourists leave, just him and the statue, and talks to his old friend. says, "It's been 40 years, brother. 40 years since that phone call. I've tried to keep my promise, tried to honor what you taught me. I don't know if I've done enough. I don't know if anyone could do enough. You left a hole that can't be filled, but I've tried." An elderly Chinese man approaches, recognizes Chuck, and says in broken English, "You knew Bruce Lee?" Chuck nods. The elderly man's eyes fill with tears, says, "He was my hero, made me proud to be Chinese when the world told me to be ashamed. You tell him thank you?" Chuck says, "I tell him every day." The man bows deeply, walks away. Chuck realizes this is what legacy means, not statues or plaques, but changed lives, inspired people, proof that existence mattered.
In 2020, 47 years after Bruce's death, during an interview about Chuck's own legacy, the interviewer asks what Chuck is most proud of in his career. Chuck pauses, thinks, says, "Being Bruce Lee's friend." That's it. Everything else, championships, films, schools, fame, that's all accomplishment. But being trusted, respected, and loved by Bruce Lee, that's not something you accomplish. That's something you earn through character. That's something that means more than any trophy, because it means Bruce saw something in me worth his time, his teaching, his friendship. 47 years after his death, that's still the thing I'm most proud of. The interviewer, surprised, says, "More than your championships? More than your films?" Chuck says without hesitation, "Yes, because those things I did for myself. My friendship with Bruce was something we built together, something that made both of us better. And when he died, I didn't lose a colleague. I lost someone who understood me completely, who pushed me to improve, who believed I could be more than I was. You don't replace that, you just honor it, every day, for as long as you live." So here's the question. Who in your life has died that you promised to honor? What are you doing to keep that promise? What legacy are you carrying forward that isn't your own? Because Chuck Norris made a promise at Bruce Lee's grave 50 years ago to honor his friend's legacy every single day. And 50 years later, he's still keeping that promise. Still mentions Bruce in every interview, still teaches Bruce's philosophy, still makes sure new generations know who Bruce was and what he stood for. That's not grief anymore. That's love. That's friendship that transcends death. That's what it means to truly honor someone, not with words on anniversaries, but with actions every day. Who are you honoring? And are you honoring them the way they deserve to be honored? Because the dead can't speak for themselves. They depend on the living to tell their story, carry their message, complete their mission. Chuck Norris has spent 50 years being Bruce Lee's voice. Whose voice are you? And when you die, whose voice will you trust to tell your story? Choose people who will honor you the way Chuck honors Bruce, because that's friendship. That's legacy. That's love that survives death.